So welcome everybody to today's lunch talk. I see 50 participants and counting, which is really exciting. I'm Kevin Maywis, and I'm the department chair, program chair for teaching and curriculum. And it's my honor to introduce Dr. Carol St. George, faculty in teaching and curriculum, director of Project Read, and soon to be appointed Sheila Konar professor of literacy at the Warner School of Education. If you haven't heard Carol proselytize about transformative power of literacy, literacy learning, literacy teaching, literacy for individuals, literacy for all, well, then you've never met Carol St. George. Her ever-growing Project Read, which is a community engagement initiative that involves young learners, pre-service and practicing teachers, literacy specialists, and community members, is really fundamentally about approaching family, community, and school life authentically, confidently, and critically through powerful reading, writing, listening, and speaking opportunities. Dr. St. George and doctoral students, Carrie Argyropoulos and Shi Shen are also here, and others. We've got a lot to share today about Project Read in the past and present, and how it's changed over time and where it's headed, and what its impacts are. So I'll end my introduction immediately and turn the floor over to Carol St. George and colleagues with a request that non-presenters make sure that your audios are muted during the presentation, and a reminder that if you've got questions for the presenters, feel free to drop those questions in the chat as the presentation is happening, or feel free to pose the questions after our presenters have shared today, and I'll help moderate that conversation. Carol, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Kevin. That's very sweet of you. And yes, a number of students will be sharing today. So we have a jam-packed hour to talk about literacy and Project Read, which has been, well over a dozen years in progress. I think we started in 2009. I'm happy to see Rafaela here because I know she was part of our beginning. I will say that because I see so many people who have been part of Project Read, if you'd like to share in the chat, please do. She did this fabulous job of putting together a Padlet. She's going to put into the chat the link for that. If you would like, thank you, She. If you would like to contribute to it, if you've been part of Project Read, or if you want to share in the chat, please do so, because I really want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to see that. So I'm going to share my screen, but if I'm boring and you want to look at the Padlet in the meantime, go ahead. That's fine with me. So Project Read has been a community project. At School 36, we started back, and like I said, I believe it was 2009, but maybe earlier, because we had some beginnings with Project Read. You can all see my screen, right? And I should probably, we're good here. Okay, and now we're at School 33, and we're at East Lower and High School. So I'm sharing these quotes with you, but as Kevin pointed out, literacy is infused in absolutely everything we do. So if I'm sharing with you the importance of literacy, I'm saying to you that it contributes, it's a major contributor to human health. Medical Association has determined that. You can't read labels, you can't read doctor's information, you can't fill out forms at the doctor's office. You clearly know that literacy is important in learning. I love my colleagues, as Kevin pointed out, social studies, science, those are all important subjects, but without being able to read, you can't access the information in those areas. We know that literacy is important for careers. You got to fill out your job applications, even for the military. It used to be, it was a placement test, and now you fill in an application for the military so that you can enter, and which is an option for kids that is not available if they're not able to read. And of course, it enhances life. There's a lot of joy in reading. I know I get excited when I get to read. And also our citizenship. We want to have people be discerning consumers of media, particularly in this age. So I'm not being overly dramatic when I say that literacy is life-changing. You've heard me say that before, and I think it's true. I say that to you so that if we think that literacy is so important, and clearly we do, I mean, who would argue with me, right, Kevin? But I think that we need to be aggressive advocates for good literacy instruction. ILA is the International Literacy Association. They've been around since 1954, and they're the premier professional organization. And they do have the standards for literacy. And a couple of years ago, no, actually, I think it was last year, they came out with the ILA's Children's Rights to Read. And I urge you, because you may very well be participating today because you are concerned about your own child's literacy learning. It would fare you well, or anyone who's interested, to go to the ILA site. They have all sorts of white papers and other papers about good literacy instruction and the children's rights to read. It's important to me. I suppose that I should share that when I think about literacy, it is political. In this day and age when we have rampant book banning, and the revival of those reading wars. Back in the 50s, it was Johnny Can't Read. And then in the 70s, it was Hooked on Phonics. And now you're going to hear about science of reading wars, which benefits certain people. And usually it's the publishers and politicians, but it doesn't really benefit educators or children particularly. I say that to you because we know that slaves were forbidden to read. That's all you need to know that literacy is political. And women too. I have a book, Women Who Read Are Dangerous, because I think they thought that women's brains would explode, truly. Really. But the idea that we keep literacy from people is a matter of equity and social justice. So I really believe that good literacy instruction is a matter of equity. And I need to position myself, or I would like to position myself for you at the urging of my students and in full disclosure, that my passion for literacy is both professional and personal. I come from a long line of people who have reading dyslexia. My grandfather, my mother, my brother, though not me, and my daughters, and though not my son. And so I know the struggle. I saw the struggle of my parents trying to work through a school system they were not familiar with. They were not educators, and they really wanted to do everything they could to help my brother. I was much more able to advocate for my daughters. And I'm here to tell you that all three of my children are college graduates. In fact, my daughters, one is a scientist and does remarkable work publishing that's changed policy for the water up in the Adirondacks. And my other daughter is a graduate student at Warner, some of you may know. So they're successful and they've learned to read. I like to say they came into reading through the back door. And that's something that we need to discover. No more of this spray and pray where everybody gets all the same kinds of things. Every piece of instruction needs to be unique, I think. So anyway, I share this quote as I'm talking about advocacy because Kofi Annan, and I'm trying to move around here, he says that literacy is the bulwark, a defensive wall against poverty. My line is that literacy is the antidote to poverty. And I think I think that I'm really very adamant about that, especially when we have a community here where literacy is so important and that children really do need to learn to read. When you think that the zip code determines the quality of the literacy instruction that you get, then we have a problem. That is just not, when you think about the area that we live in with the most concentrated poverty of like-sized cities and the most discrepancy Kara Finnegan's work between Penfield and Rochester and SES, that it really matters to us that we have important tools to combat poverty. And I think that literacy is the tool. I know. So if we agree that literacy is important and we agree that we need to be advocates, this of course is Warner. And we believe that Theory and practice need to go hand in hand in good instruction. I share this with you, our beliefs about literacy, because your belief about literacy determines what you think about assessment. It determines what you think about good intervention, what you think about reading at all. So I just wanted to ground us. We believe here that literacy is a social practice, grounded in social, historical, cultural, and political contexts of use, and that it's not small bits of information that can be testable. And that contrasts with some other definitions of literacy. I also wanted to share the screen for you because I'm director of reading and literacies, as Kevin said, and that's not a mistake. It's not misspelling. We really believe that there are multiple literacies. And that is really an important piece of the instruction that we prepare our teacher candidates with, and we invest in our Project Read work. So if you think about, reading and knitting, because I knit, can you read a knitting or pattern? Can you read all of the manuals? What about digital literacy? There are many multiple literacies. I'm talking fast because I really want to get to all of my students, but I hope that if you have any questions, you'll throw them in the chat. So here's the question. Now, if we were to gather and I'd be asking you what is reading, but because of the time constraints, I'm gonna hold off a little bit on that. But I would like you to think about, you can put it in the chat, what do you think reading is? And I might like to point out right now that this darling little girl, Brooklyn, is the granddaughter of Denise Jose, who will be sharing later. And how cute is that, right? And I'm going to give you just a second to think about what you think reading is, what comes to mind, because I am now going to share with you a definition that I feel that I return to often. This is from Constance Weaver, and it talks about the multiple aspects of reading. Maybe some of these came into your mind when we first started talking, when I first asked you about what is reading. But it talks about the fact that language knowledge, and prior experience comes into play. Your whole idea about using the aspects of predicting, questioning, summarizing the questions, the metacognition piece. We are thinking about your thinking while you're reading is really pretty important. But I underlined this. I highlighted the process also involves such affective factors such as motivation, ownership, purpose, and self-esteem. We found that through Project Read, children need to have confidence. It takes a risk. It's an educational risk to learn how to read. When we first started working with children, if they didn't know a word, they'd look at us and wait for us to give it to them. And that's not a strategy because we're not going to be by their side all of the time, clearly. And it takes confidence and trust to approach reading a reading task. And of course, when you talk about knowing words, like for example, those of you who are playing Wordle know that this is all about what I do, because you get really familiar with consonant blends and what letters will go together. What was it yesterday? Oh, it was sweet. So could it be sweet? Could it be sheet? Could it be sleet? Could it be skeet? I mean, those kinds of things those are tools that we use as we read. Consonant blends. Oh, and when I start reading with children, I'm astounded sometimes that the basic pieces of reading, for example, that you don't start in the middle of the book. I had a child come to me and say, "Will you read with me?" And she opened it in the middle. Concepts of print. She didn't realize that there was a beginning, a middle, and an end of a story. Did you hold the book right side up? All of those kinds of things matter when we talk about supporting literacy learning. I joke that I'm a pretty good reader, but I went on vacation and they put a newspaper. You know how they do in those hotels? They put a newspaper outside my door. And the headline was, "Planets to Change Rotation Tonight." And I thought, oh my goodness, what's going on here? I don't know about this. This is really scary. I'm on vacation. I haven't listened to the news and I'm reading it, and I kept reading it and I was so confused. And I can pretty much read. It was a sports page of the local team, and the planets were the basketball team. I say that because we do this to children all the time. Context matters. We need to help them meet success as they approach text. And I realize that I better move on. So this brings us to Project Read. This is a picture of our dear Sheila Konar, who recently passed. She was a role model and a visionary. She went to School 36, which is on St. Jacobs Street, when she was young, and she volunteered in a first grade classroom for years. And one time she was in the classroom, a wonderful teacher, I might add, but this was a school that was in receivership, and so they were using the Reader First program, which is very phonics-based. The stout hound goes about the ground with the mouse abound, which Kevin pointed out, the stout hound should go to the pound. But who talks like that, let alone an inner city 6-year-old, right? And then you go from the OU to the OW, which was we go downtown to get her a crown. And I mean, because that's relevant to anybody's life, really, I guess. Joking, of course. So Sheila was in this first grade room. Out of the 21 children, they wanted to keep 16 children back. She said, I'm educated. I'm not an educator, but I'm educated. I know this isn't right. And she knew that the teacher was a good teacher. She said, okay, Warner, you're the School of Education. She went to Rafaela and said, what can you do? And by all good fortune, Rafaela said to me, what do you think? And I said, we can teach kids to read. That was in the end of January, I think. And by May, we were able to move 12 of those 16 children to second grade. We had 75% success. 2 children moved, 1 child went to special ed. So with that, fortified with that, we started Project Read officially. And we moved to School 33 and East when School 36 closed. I'm looking at the time. And this is the design of what we do. In Project Read. We have multiple levels of support and multiple targets. So we plan strategic intervention with, child-centered, working directly with students in K3 and middle. We provide in-class support for the teachers. We and when I say we, I get to go too, and we work in various ways with support. We provide professional development. And sometimes we've done half-day PDs for staff. Sometimes we do staff and our students together, multiple levels. And she and Carrie and Elise will be talking more about that because that's been absolutely a robust part, particularly through the pandemic. The professional development piece, our seminar has really changed things. So this should say family involvement and literacy events to support literacy. And the secondary target is preparing future educators. And that's been a huge piece for me. What joy it is to see so many of our Project Read people being out in the field as really outstanding educators. So here we are, we're planning strategic intervention, lots of different ways. I'm going to go quickly through some of these because the thrill is seeing these darling children's faces, but so that you can see that there are multiple ways. This is at School 33. Judy, who I know is on here, uses the floor as instruction. Here's Carrie working with the child. We provide in-class support. There's me, I get to read with the kids. This is Michelle, as you see. Jamila Hood, she's a teacher in 3rd grade. No, not 3rd grade. She's a reading teacher at School 33 now. I'm going quickly, but I want to see. As I said, preparing future educators is huge. These are faces that many of you may recognize and will be on the Padlet. Some of them are on the Padlet. The literacy coach, Dan, is there as the literacy coach right now. These are all folks who are working in the area as literacy specialists. Let me go back to this because I just went too fast here. Michelle, who's a current doc student, who's with me from the beginning. Here's Alexa, who is just a current doc grad. You'll find that many of the people in Project Read stay with us for a long time. Dan is a literacy coach at East right now, and he's now just been admitted to the doctoral program. And some of these faces you'll recognize as we go along, literacy teachers in various spots that I am so proud to be get to work with these folks. So we had family involvement. These were events that we planned. I point them out because notice a large group of fathers. You know, elementary schools in particular can be female friendly. Those little itty bitty chairs and those cutesy bulletin boards don't always lend themselves to making males comfortable in a school. The deals we do are like, okay, here's pizza. We'll do a workshop where we can model for folks how to pick a book and read it with their children as we read to kids, and then we get jugglers or some entertainment, and we've been very successful with that. The pandemic affected it, of course. The literacy events that we've done in the past with Project Read too. This is Vivian Polidoro. Those of you who are at Warner, there's a science lab on the second floor that Vivian contributed to. And she was a docent. We went to the MAG. They opened up early for us. We took the kids. Max's gave us free lunches. How cool was that? We've had famous authors come and share with the kids and done different projects. I like to say, literacy is an active phenomenon. Genuine learning can only occur when it's meaningful and relevant to the learner. We have done some research, and this was in collaboration with the Hokelman Society. I think Kelly McDermott might be part of us. Dr. Andy Aline, I've done a lot of work with him. This was a 2-year study. I will explain to you that the kids were able to pick out 12 books of their choice. And so we had a control group. These kids got to pick a book of their choice, 12 books at the end of the school year, as opposed to some children who got books mailed to them at their level. And surprise, surprise, motivation mattered. We know that choice is a huge piece of motivation. And it was a headline in the DNC that motivation is increased when kids have choice, and the reading levels were proved it. We did pre and post testing. This is one of the most exciting things, and I'm so glad so many of the Delta Kappa Gamma Alpha Alpha chapter ladies are with us right now. The Konar Foundation gave us a special grant. This is for a pilot. We've just started it. And you know those days in your life that are just like such a thrill? You remember them forever. This just happened the week before last, because I got to help deliver. We started a pilot program to build children's home libraries, because research says that just having one book in the home really amplifies literacy learning. And so a number of the people in Project Read, Elise, who you're going to hear from shortly, she put these wonderful family packets together, some in Spanish, as a matter of fact, with games and activities for home. Zane put together the actual bag. She and Kim Kopatz ran off the copies for the families, packaged them in these lovely bags. You can see the labels that Zane had made up. And Judy, who's on this call, had a brilliant idea of printing, and she printed herself the labels to put in the books. But I can't tell you the thrill the children had. I was planning to write the kids' names in the books, but seeing their name in print actually in the book was amazing. And the Alpha Alpha ladies had heard that the children, we had a problem with the kids being able to keep their books in a place, that they really needed somewhere to keep. They're building their budding libraries, and they contributed these beautiful baskets. And you can see the joy of the kids. And you can see here, I get to read to kids. I get to model. A number of people were there. Michael was there, and Jerry Wang, both of who will be talking, and Carrie and I. So it was a thrill, and we're looking forward to more. So thank you, Konar Foundation, who I know Lorna's representing multiple roles here. So thank you for that. So I mentioned before that professional development has been huge, and I'm going to pass it over to Carrie and She, because it has really changed the way Project Read has been effective, especially particularly during the pandemic. And I don't want to take up too much time. So I'm going to stop sharing here, but I'm going to return to talk about the results of our work in terms of statistics and what we found. But I'll stop sharing here and pass it on to Sheehan and Carrie and Elise to talk about our seminar.
I think I'll go I'll share first. Hello, everyone. My name is Elise Cunzio. You heard my name already. I'm a native New Yorker. I currently am working as a kindergarten teacher in a bilingual school in Bavaria, Germany. I joined Warner in 2020 remotely. I remain remote. I'm a double master's student in both TESOL and reading and literacy programs. I have to say, I'm really thankful to Dr. St. George, who warmly welcomed me into the reading and literacy fold. I'm pretty certain she could see very early on that I was seeking a way to combine my passions for both languages and literacy. So needless to say, I really didn't need any kind of push to begin volunteering with Project Read. I began working with students who were attending school remotely during the pandemic, and that was my first experience. It was at this time the importance of early literacy interventions became abundantly clear, but also the disparity that exists in education, especially when working with students in higher poverty districts. Now, I was familiar with the statistics, but I have to say, witnessing what that actually looked like for students, it's really been pivotal for me in my practice going forward as a literacy activist. Now, I know that we could say the pandemic school year was really challenging for everyone. But while some families, they were struggling with schedules and sharing home devices, the students who I was working with, they were sharing an unstable Wi-Fi connection outside of their home in a cramped room with sometimes dozens of other children. We weren't just asking students to be resilient or focused. We were actually asking them to overcome impossible barriers that they had little to no control over. Now, you may also share your own fair share of hardships. And I'll say that I'm no stranger to disparities myself. I grew up in extreme poverty, but there's a difference. And that difference is that I'm white. And I almost say that guiltily because it's not something that I control, of course. And I speak the dominant language in our society. And so while I've really had to work hard, and I don't want to diminish anyone's hard work, there are certain advantages that the color of my skin and the language that I speak has afforded me over my lifetime. So it's because of that awareness of my privilege that I really can't ignore or minimize the fact that the students who we are working with are facing systemic issues of racism and deficit ideologies, which result in a resource desert. The pandemic merely exacerbated those gaps in equity. Having had the opportunity to work with students at School 33 and at East, it really opened my eyes to just how important it is to have advocates for students who aren't born with those aforementioned advantages. But as we champion for our students, I think we also need to show students how to advocate for themselves. And I know that sounds controversial, but that's the key to it. And that's, I strongly believe that empowering students with literacy, it's life altering. And that brings me to the efforts to join the project leadership team last semester. So that's where I had the opportunity to share my expertise and also to aid in providing training and support to our volunteers that are now able to physically be in schools. I also wanted to be involved in bridging the tangible resource gap that became so apparent during the pandemic. Now, this has led us to the very important work of building our students' home libraries. Home libraries, if you didn't know, they are one of the greatest predictors in students' future success. There was a question about some data. I can share a really important study. It was Sakura and Kelly. They actually published in 2019 a 2-decade-long study that looked at 31 different societies. And the study demonstrated that books in adolescence actually enhances adult literacy, numeracy, and technology skills. So as Dr. St. George had mentioned, due to a very special grant from the Konar Foundation, we were able to take our first and very important step in making this a reality. We personalized literacy packets for our students, as you got to see some images of, and there was bilingual options, lots of literacy resources, and their very own copy of a kindergarten classic, Chicka Chicka Boom Boom. I'm looking forward to continuing this really important and life-changing work with Project READ, especially with the knowledge that we are building bridges to equitable opportunities. But I really also don't want it to be lost on you that while we are making an impact through this work, the students who we're working with, of course, are making an impact on us every single day. Students who I've worked with in this program have made me a better teacher, a better communicator, more creative in my working processes, and it's required that I search for tools and resources that meet the diverse needs of our students. So the circle of impact in Project READ, it truly fosters a community of learners, each of us growing and benefiting from the other. I'd like to now pass the podium to She, who will share with you the theories that support our practice as a community of learners. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Elise. So I'm going to share my screen a little bit. So we see our project as a community of practice as it refers to a group of people who share the concern and passion for something they do, and they want to learn how to do it better as they interact regularly. So these are the three key structural characteristics of community of practice: domain, community, and practice. So we can see that we shared the interest and vision that literacy is lifelong changing, and it's a human right, and it's not a choice, it's a must. And we also build relationships through joint activities at schools. Like we go to school every week and we pair up our interns, and at seminars, we provide rapport to each other and endeavor to solve any questions that are raised. And moreover, we also developed a shared repertoire of resources like experience, tools, ways of addressing problems. So we are trying to make use of everyone's expertise in our community and support each other in various aspects. Now let's welcome Carrie to tell us the detailed stories about what we have done as the learning community.
Hi everyone, I'm Carrie Ardropoulos. I'm a doc student in TNC, and I've been with Project READ now for going on 6 years. I started as an intern, and now I work as a graduate assistant in the program. And I just wanted to lay out a little bit, take some time to outline the ways in which our seminar has grown and changed over the years. So Dr. St. George has always been committed to Project READ being a community of learners, recognizing that each member has something important to contribute. We've always spent our time during seminar problem solving, discussing ways that theory informs practice, sharing strategies that work. We learn from each other, but we also learn from the teachers that we've been able to work with. And of course, we are always learning from our students. And just as an aside, I wanted to say that one particularly gratifying aspect of Project READ is the way that the students and teachers that we work with have been so willing to allow us to become a part of their worlds without any reservation. And I think about particularly last year, they literally invited us into their homes through Zoom. So we always keep in mind as we work how lucky we are to have the privilege of spending time with these kids and learning from them. So the Project READ community of learners has grown and changed over the years in amazing ways. For me, the shift really began when our Warner International students joined us. It was wonderful when Dr. Barassi sent these students our way, as they brought a whole new perspective to our work. As English language learners themselves, they have a unique insight into what these young students are going through as they learn to read and write. As TESOL educators, they bring new skill sets to our group. And as newcomers to the American public school system, I feel that they provide a fresh set of eyes, helping those of us that were brought up in this system to look more closely at some of the aspects of it that we might take for granted or just accept, even if maybe we shouldn't. Our international students have brought so much joy and excitement to their work at Project READ, and as volunteers, their enthusiasm and desire to make a difference has really invigorated the program. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. And when the pandemic hit, of course, we all went virtual. We initially struggled with how to continue to support our students and to make seminars meaningful for the group. But the commitment to our work from everywhere, all sides, was amazing. Dr. St. George, of course, was determined to make something work. We had the teachers in the schools asking for our support. We had our local volunteers and our literacy students willing to do whatever was necessary. And we had international students who were literally staying up all hours of the night to Zoom in from China and Germany and work with these students from their homes. So when we began meeting together for seminar virtually, our community of learners kind of shifted again. We were a group of people that had literacy expertise. We had English language learning expertise, but we needed more. And we realized that. So we kind of looked into within our community of learners and we found it. We found the expertise. We had a doctoral student who was doing dissertation work on online learning platforms. So she shared her knowledge. We had people that were actively working with or as classroom teachers and teaching online. So they shared what was working for them. Through our discussions and seminar, it became very apparent, as it did to many in the world of education during this time, that social emotional concerns were at the forefront of so much of what we were seeing with the kids. So we tapped into members of our group that had done professional development work around SEL in their own work lives, and even invited the SEL team from East to join us to talk about the ways that they were supporting their kids and ways that we could support them too. We found that the connections between our work and theirs were very strong, as so much of what we do is about building relationships with our students. So we continue to grow, welcome new members into our Project Read community, some of whom you'll hear from in a few moments. We've shifted to kindergarten this year at School 33 and are always exploring new ways to support teachers and students, both there and at East. One example being the new initiative that Dr. St. George and Elise both described earlier. And our seminars provide a place where we can come together to support each other, talk through issues facing students and teachers, strengthen our pedagogical knowledge, share expertise, and celebrate the big things and the little things. We recognize that the more we can expand this community and tap into its expertise and knowledge, the better we'll be at serving our students, which in the end is why we're all here doing what we do. So with that, I will turn it back over to Dr. St. George for a few more moments. You're muted, Dr. St. George.
I don't know what I'd do without Carrie. I was just saying wonderful things about how I get to work with these fabulous students and the children that we work with as well. I'm so very fortunate. So I'm coming back very quickly to share about our results. So through the years, we found that the children who participate in the program, who are identified by the teachers as needing extra help, have made significant improvement in their reading levels. And through the work that we do on one-to-one. And compared to their peers, they make at least twice as much progress in the same period of time. And there's also increased the qualitative measures of increased enjoyment in school and literacy, more enthusiasm towards reading, better attendance, and on days when they're working with their interns, because we develop a relationship. And what we've learned is that it's all about relationships among ourselves. Our seminar is really very tight. We become very, very close. We make relationships with the children. I always say we are not judgmental or evaluative when we go in the schools. It's important that we have a good relationship with the teachers that we work with. We need access to the children. And I know what it's like to be a classroom teacher and have somebody from the outside come in. And that's not our job. This is to we can model and we can provide professional development, but I am not there to criticize anybody else. Teaching is a wonderful occupation. It's a terrific career, and I'll never throw a teacher under the bus. But the relationship that we build with classroom teachers is also very important. And as students' physical and emotional needs affect learning, and they need to be met foremost, as Carrie was talking about SEL. And then checking biases, assumptions, and socially constructed expectations of grade level or other kinds of things. David, I've been reading the things that you're putting in the chat, and thank you. Yes, of course, we know that. We don't want to criminalize a 6-year-old because they can't read. But as Elise pointed out, there are so many aspects that we are very much aware contribute to literacy learning. So I do have some more folks who would like to share before we get to the Padlet and we get to questions. So Denise, are you? I can't see you. Oh, there you are.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Denise Jose. I've been with Project Read for about 3 years now. It's my third school year with Project Read. I'm a retired educator. I spent 15 years as a foreign language teacher at high school. And then the last 19 years of my career, I was an assistant principal and then a principal of a middle school. So although retirement is wonderful, I love it, very happy, I still needed to be a part of the classroom and kids and education and my own learning. And Carol St. George was assigned my advisor in the doctoral program of teaching and curriculum over at Warner. And the rest is history. We talked about Project Read, and I immediately wanted to become a part of it. So I've been working with students at School 33 as well as seventh graders at Lower East. What I really wanted to highlight briefly was what Carrie was talking about in terms of the seminar. The seminars are pivotal to our work together. We meet once a week, as Carrie said, and it's become a very valuable time. I know for me personally, we share our experiences, we share strategies, we share resources. And one thing that Carol mentioned, we also share that we combine theory and practice, which is so important. We have to keep that in our minds and really be purposeful to really bring together university as well as the schools, public schools in particular, that combining theory and practice is so powerful when we work together to support our kids, and especially with literacy. When we meet together in our seminars, it's an opportunity for Carrie and for she and for Dr. St. George to really communicate some of the things that are happening in the classroom and then the schools in particular that we may not know right away or have an awareness of. And that allows us to be very purposeful with our time with students, whether it be School 33 or individually as a tutoring, or in the classroom, it's Lower East, seventh graders. During the pandemic, when we were working virtually, it was very important. And when my first year with School 33 students, one point in the year, I was working on sight words. The same time the following year when the pandemic had hit, I was working on letter recognition with students in first grade. So all of that and being able to have conversations with teachers and be support to one another, I believe really supported our students really well. Like I said, the communication allows me to be more purposeful with the limited time I have with students. It also helps me, which I think is extremely important, to help students make the connection with what they're doing with me to what's happening in the classroom. It's not just an add-on, it's not just a supplement, but it's something that's making a connection so that they can feel more confident in what they're doing in the classroom. It also, Carol talked a little bit about relationships. It is about relationships, especially when we get to our kids in seventh grade. You know, I worked in middle school for 19 years, and watching kids go from that, you know, sixth grade, the elementary structure, to the seventh grade, the secondary expectations, and as far as literacy, those kids that had those challenges struggled greatly because the expectations were more. So when working with our students at Lower East, that's really become a passion, and Carol knows. I really want to pursue that a little bit more. The students really need to have their confidence lifted, and they need to trust you. And they don't see those connections right away, what you're doing with them, to how it relates to what they do in social studies or science or math or any of their other content area classes. So helping them make those connections has been something that I've been able to do as a result of some of those seminars. Carol also talked about our work being a social practice and our responsibility. I am so thankful to be a part of this group, and it really helps me to pursue some things I feel more passionate about, and to be able to fulfill the responsibility that I have, even though I'm not working anymore in terms of being in a classroom or in a school building as an administrator or a teacher. This is a lifelong responsibility that I carry with me. So thank you very much. I'm so thankful to be a part of this program.
I think Jerry is next, and then Kalanda and Michael, and then we'll share the Padlet and get to questions.
Okay, thank you, Carol and Denise. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jerry Wong, a master student in TESOL program at Warner. I have been working in Project READ since fall 2021 as an international student, although working as a teacher both in China and other regions before. Project READ is my first teaching practice here for my major in the US, and it does make me gain a lot. How to become a good teacher? Only theoretical learning is never adequate. Practice is a vital process to polish all the pedagogical theories that I have learned in my class. For example, how to implement differentiation among students with different language proficiency and literacy level, how to keep the students on track while they lose interest or face challenge, how to help the students who get behind in literacy keep in pace with their peers, etc. All of this need to be figured out in a practice step by step. Working in the program, I not only get a better and deeper understanding of my major contents, but get a direct touch and feeling about the American K-12 educational system, which enables me to understand better about how and why the theories are in my major study. By establishing a stable emotional supporting relationship between my student and me, and making my student part of his own learning process, I gradually turn it into practice that language learning process should take place in a community atmosphere. And the community is not only for the student or me or other team members, but for everyone, which means the community we build up together under the frame of Project RATE makes everyone thrive. I cherish the opportunity and time to work with the student in a program, while I also cherish our excellent team. And in addition to work with the kids in school every week, I do learn a lot from each week's seminar with our excellent teammates. With their help, I found much more useful teaching materials, methods, and resources. Working in the project with our experienced team members who are also excellent teachers, I feel that I'm also a student, and there's much more that I can learn and improve for myself. I have had a great interest in English teaching and learning since I was a pupil. For me, English is not simply a language, but more like a key to open the door to a new world to feel new things. The cheerful and outgoing personality makes me happy to help more people feel the charm of this universal language in the world. Here in Warner community, I appreciate that Project RATE enables me to fulfill my passion to teach. All in all, being part of Warner community and working in Project RATE makes me so proud of my educational mission and role here. Thank you guys. And then let's welcome Cleanda to share about her experience here.
Afternoon, everyone. I apologize. I'm actively teaching as we are in this beautiful session. My entrance into this beautiful program was by happenstance. I was in the process of, now I could say, a member of the Warner family. I reached out to Dr. St. George because I, as a parent who is has a 10-year-old, who had problems with literacy due to the pandemic and not being able to log on. He had some medical issues, and I was trying to find a way to help him bridge his gap, feeling defeated as an educator myself and not being able to reach my son. So I had to transform hats, and Dr. St. George was so welcoming when she invited me to the platform of the seminar. Walter D. Myers said reading is not an option, and I feel that way as a parent. And I was able to see how these beautiful individuals were able to not only grasp information and make it readily available for students and parents, but they welcomed me in, not knowing me from Adam. And Dr. St. George saw my need as a mother, and she herself was able to open up and share with me her concerns she had as a mother. And as we were able to work together, I was able to have access to materials that not only help my son, but help my students here in Buffalo. When you think about literacy is everywhere, you also think about literacy blooms, and that's what I think of it as. When I say literacy blooms, you have the libraries and the classrooms, you have the common unity and how community is built. And I have a creed in my class, and I have my students say we are a family and may we live by this creed. This seminar is very active what my creed is for my students. So someone said in the chat, how is this information readily available for parents? I, as a parent, can tell you as a parent, as a teacher, and as an educator within a community of learners, the information is easily accessible. They are readily available to give whatever is needed, and they go the extra mile. They have helped me to see the importance of what Walter Dean Meyer said to my students as we begin reading Bad Boy, that literacy is everywhere. Reading is not an option. Reading is a human right. And I'm excited to go along this journey with Dr. St. George and this beautiful team as we begin to help students in the Rochester area and around the world to see that reading is a human right, literacy is everywhere, and we will champion what is before us. Thank you.
Michael, do you want to go quickly and then we'll do the Padlet and answer some questions?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Michael Tyman. It's an absolute privilege to be here to meet you all today. First and foremost, it's a great, I feel very blessed not only to be part of this great university, the University of Rochester and the Warner School, but to be in Project Read. I think about every day I go back into the classrooms, and when I started this past January, and I go into the kindergarten class, and every day I leave selfishly thinking for a second about myself. I leave feeling pretty good. They all wave to me when I walk in the classroom. I leave, they all wait. I'm trying to tell my family they should do that when I go home at the end of every day. But it makes me think about the role models we have in our lives and the startings. What a great blessing it is to have a great start in your life. Something my grandfather, who's very close to me, has always told me is that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And it's so important to have role models and have people around you. And if I can be just 1% of what he was to me, for these students, and it's just a great blessing to be part of this. I also think about something that I read recently from Cardinal Timothy Dolan, Archbishop in New York, talking about whatever you do, your vocation, your profession, you should do it with all your heart, your mind, and your soul. And I think about the people who I've had in my life, the male role models I've had. My father has worked in public housing for 40 years. My grandfather worked in education for almost 50 years himself. And I could spend 5 hours talking about the strong women in my family. But I just feel very blessed to be part of this program. I started in January, and I feel very grateful to Dr. St. George and the university for giving me this opportunity. So thank you, and it's a pleasure to meet everybody.
Thank you, Michael. It's turning into such a love fest for Project Read. And like I see Nahoko there. I know that she has put her heart into it, and I appreciate it. And as I said, my friends, Marina and my friends, well, all who have been part of this success. She made this fabulous Padlet, and I would really like for you to get to see the testimonials and the impact of students who participated. So, Chi, do you want to stick that back in there? And we'll give you a few minutes to look through, maybe just listen to one, and then we can do some questions and answers. I did see some of the questions on there. But looking at the Padlet, maybe you could pick a couple now or look at them. Or Kevin, what do you think?
Yeah. Why don't we have folks access the Padlet and check them out after we have a chance for a couple of questions. It's 12:54, and there's a couple of questions in the chat that I wanted to make sure that we got to. So copy that Padlet, check it out, because there's really great testimonials in there, both video and text. You should absolutely look through them. They're wonderful. I did want to make sure that we got to, there were 2 questions in the chat, one from Lorna and one from Tina. Lorna had asked, with Project Read, how are parents equipped with strategies to support their children at home? And Tina asked, how does Project Read, measure progress? What data collection instruments, what assessments, what progress monitoring tools do you use? So I'm wondering if you could address those 2 questions.
Sure, quickly. Thanks, Lorna. As I said, with the book distribution, we did home activities, and we have in the past done professional development and included families. How to help support your students with writing, for example, was a half-day piece. But with the pandemic, those kinds of things change. A lot of my students are responsible for doing a case study too, where they make recommendations for homes about books and ideas and strategies. So, my work is with family involvement. How can teachers more effectively collaborate with families to support literacy learning. So I am indeed one of those people who feels that family involvement is really important. So thank you for asking and giving me an opportunity to share the kinds of things. Elise did a fabulous job making the family packets with Chicka Chicka Boom Boom. I hope that answers your question. And Tina, I'm so glad that you were able to come. I was hoping that you could. I know that there's so many people who are concerned about their children's literacy learning. The measurements we use running reading records, which makes students thinking transparent, measuring levels for literacy learning. We use the NWEAs with the schools, although School 33 just stopped. So we use standardized testing measurements, and we use our own individual assessments. With kindergartners, of course, we're using things that the Brugance for reading readiness. And for East, there are multiple levels of evaluation. They use System 44 and they use Read 180, and those are measures that they use. So we use standardized assessment, and then we use individual assessments. I hope that answers your question. You know, I'm looking through anything I'm missing. Any other questions, Kevin?
There was some spirited conversation in the chat that Elise did a nice job addressing.
I saw David's questions. Yes, when you think about the fact that fourth grade reading scores contribute to how many prisons that they're going to make, and those of you who last week were part of the Hokelman grand rounds, where they're talking about literacy as a social justice. He was very adamant that many incarcerated people are unable to read. I think that that's what we're speaking to when we're talking about helping people change their lives through literacy. David's my dear friend, and I appreciate your input, David, and I understand what you're saying. But at the same time, I've got to be pretty adamant that literacy is life-changing, and giving people quality literacy instruction is giving them an opportunity to change their lives for the better. So.
Lots of thank yous and kudos in the chats. Jessica asked, what constitutes quality literacy instruction? Big question.
It is a big question. We can do a whole nother hour on that. Well, I look at quality instruction. When I told you, like, for example, many of the schools in receivership, they get a watered down version, strictly phonics. Phonics is certainly important. Believe me, nobody is fighting the idea that phonics is important. It's a foundation. But, for my own girls, I say they came to reading through the back door. Sounds was not the way to approach it. I go into schools, and some of the suburbs have these beautifully, richly illustrated books. I go into some of the cities who don't have the resources. They're working off black and white dittos. That's not the same quality. That's not equity. The whole idea of immersing kids and having them see books as mirrors, where they see themselves with culturally relevant literature, and that they're windows to other people, that we learn about other cultures and other people and other conditions through books. That's quality literacy instruction. I appreciate the chance to answer that question, because it's a really valid one, and you're right. Throwing words out is important, but there is a lot of differences in the approaches to literacy instruction.
Carol, I hope you don't mind if I just make one little comment here.
Never.
Some of the work from working with some of the seventh graders at East. Someone asked about how we're measuring our work. And we certainly had quantitative data. What I'm starting to do is just take a look at some more qualitative data. And certainly with our seventh graders, how do they see themselves as readers? Who are they? And I did a survey, and I can do this some other time, it's running out of time, but the 9 students I spoke with, and I spoke with them individually, have a hard time seeing themselves as readers, even describing what is a good reader, what does it take to read. So I think that as we work more and more with some more qualitative data, that will also be a measure.
Please, thank you for saying that, because I'm amazed. Little children walk in and I say, let me read your shirt. They don't realize that they're immersed in literacy, that there are words on their shirt. those are the kinds of things that so surprise me. They don't see the value for reading either, for their place. That the work that Denise said, they don't have books. They don't see any value in learning to read. Those are important pieces. The idea that literacy is life enhancing is beyond some children, because as Denise says, their relationship with learning has been fractured. They don't see themselves as competent or able to learn. So those are really important pieces. I know we're running out of time. I sure wish we had more time.
Me too.
So thank you.
It is 1 o'clock. Thank you for your participation, everyone. And Carol and team, fantastic job. Thank you. And don't forget to check out the Padlet in the chat, the link to the Padlet.